It's time for the No Nonsense Roundtable. Insights to capture your imagination from people you know and people you'd like to know about. Each week, a different guest from a different walk of life. Now, here is the host of the No Nonsense Roundtable, Dom Genova.
Well, welcome again to another edition of the No Nonsense Roundtable. I'm Dom Genova, your host, every Saturday right here on News Radio Wham 1180. And you can get all the past episodes on nononsenseroundtable.com. And I'm here with somebody, well, I think it's your third appearance on the show. Isn't it, Andy?
It is. Over the last 8 years, this is my third time here. So thank you very much for having me.
Well, and this fellow I'm talking to is the director of the airport, and his name is Andy Moore. And Andy, welcome back. You're always a delight because there's so much things to talk about with the airport.
Well, thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. I could talk about the airport all day long. Love the place.
Well, I think this is one of these things. When I had my car dealerships, my sister told me I had a giant toy box. Now, you had a giant toy box that is a lot more sophisticated than just having a car dealership. I mean, you have a lot of stuff going on over there.
Yeah, the airport is a city in itself. I mean, it is a huge entity. It's about 1,200 acre property. Within the airport itself, you have roughly 2,000 badged employees. And those are employees that work in all different elements of airport operation, not just county government employees. We're talking about airlines, concessions, car rentals, and so forth. About a $26 million operation, and it is a delight, but it's a challenge at the same time.
Well, you say $26 million operation, and that's per what? I mean, like per day, or that's not a whole year. I mean,
that's our annual budget is about $26 million.
I mean, but that's, well, you know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking of the airlines. I mean, they're paying their own stuff and whatever. What expenses go into that $26 million? Is administration mainly?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's two different expenses in the world of airports. There's aeronautical revenues and non-aeronautical revenues. Aeronautical revenues comprise of basically the rents and fees that the airlines pay for. The non-aeronautical revenues consist of your concession revenues, your car rental revenues, and then your parking revenues, along with any land rents that you have with tenants throughout the 1,200 acre property. So all those together comprise to be about a $26 million airport operation.
All right. Well, so the concessions that you have, does that money go to you, or does it go to somebody else?
So that goes to
not you personally. I mean,
sure. No, that goes right to the airport itself as a part of our budget. And the key thing that I like to point out is the more revenue that is generated through non-aeronautical revenues, that lessens the cost of the airlines.
And of course that gets passed down to you.
Correct.
Hopefully.
Correct.
So the question I always like to ask people, I don't remember if I did it with you when you first came on. You're like, I mean, when you were 10 years old, you didn't say you wanted to be an airport director, right? I mean, what did you want to do?
So, being a young guy, I didn't really have any career path that I was interested in. I will say that I always did have a little bit of an interest in aviation. When I was a senior in high school, I took flying lessons at the old Bill Law Aviation. And in fact, I have a photo on my phone of that flying lesson when we were taking off of runway 725, which is the general aviation runway, when I was 18 years old.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So you follow. So where'd you go to college?
So I went to Colorado State University up in Fort Collins, Colorado.
And where are you from originally?
From Penfield, New York.
And how'd you end up in Colorado?
So my parents went out there to visit some old Kodak friends when Kodak built a plant up in, I think it was in Greeley, Colorado. And they came back and they absolutely loved it. My father was like, you should take a look at Colorado State University. He and I went out, fell in love with the whole environment out there, loved the college campus atmosphere, applied, was accepted, and about 6 months later, started.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the history of the airport. Now, being a corporate town as it is with Eastman Kodak or whatever, it must have been kind of popular even back when, right?
Yeah. I mean, the history of the airport really dates back to 1927 when the airport was significantly smaller than it is today and was based off of Scottsville Road.
Okay. And we were talking before the show about Kodak and how they used to have their own hangars and all this other stuff, right?
Yeah, Kodak had some significant presence on the Scottsville Road side of the airport, which we call the general aviation, corporate business aviation side. And they had quite a few pilots. I think in the heyday, they had more than 10 pilots and 3 or 4 planes at that point in time.
Wow, that's a pretty big operation for. I mean, and what years was that?
So that would have been in the 80s, moving into the 90s.
So we were talking before the show too about the different types of aviation. I mean, you have commercial aviation, cargo. Let's go a little bit more into what the airport does other than just shuffling people around.
Yeah, and so most people, when they think of the airport, they think of the commercial side of the airport where our 8 airlines operate out of. But there's a whole nother separate side along Scottsville Road, which is where the general aviation, business aviation, and cargo aviation occurs. Rochester has a significant cargo presence with DHL and FedEx operating large planes out of the airport. Millions and millions of pounds of cargo go through those operations every year. But also we have a very rich general aviation general aviation background. We've got 2 flight schools that are doing extremely well, getting young pilots. And I shouldn't just say young pilots, but anybody interested in aviation, they could be adults too, learning how to fly, which is great. And then also the corporate business traffic at the airport is doing very well post-COVID, which is great to hear, considering everything kind of dipped down during the COVID periods. Where you have, business jets coming in and out, or business jets that are based out of Rochester. And ultimately that is good for aviation in general. That's economic activity that's occurring out at the airport.
Yeah, I'm just curious, how many business jets are normally housed there at any one point in time?
So when you look at that, as far as permitted aircraft goes, we have about 72 permitted aircraft. So when I say permitted, it's just basically a paper document with some background insurance information on it assigned to the airport. So those are based out of Rochester. On any, given day, we get, probably 15 to 20 aircraft that come in and out of the airport that aren't based here, whether, sales teams or corporate executives coming in to meet with entities and businesses here in Rochester itself. So the corporate business aviation activity is alive and well, which has had some downturns over the last couple of years, obviously with COVID going on. As those business travelers start to get back out again, which is great to see, we're starting to see that business corporate aviation really uptick.
Well, it's got to come and go with activities like the PGA and stuff like that, right?
Absolutely. The PGA will be out here in May. My team at the airport's been working with the PGA transportation team, getting everything ready, not only for the players and fans coming through the terminal, through the 8 airlines that operate out of Rochester, but also the corporate entities that will be coming in and the players that have their own jets.
Players that have their own jets. I have to tell you, I think everybody dreams of owning their own jet.
Right. Well, you have the Phil Mickelsons. I'm not sure he'll be here, but he had a Gulfstream 5, one of the largest, business jets you could get, that was parked over on the general aviation side of the airport for a while. So pretty nice aircraft to look at. Wouldn't mind flying one of those myself.
No, that comes under the category of it must be nice.
Yes.
So we're about ready to head to a break, and I have a stupid question for you when we get back.
Sure.
Okay.
Happy to. Sounds good.
Well, welcome back to the No Nonsense Roundtable. We are talking to Andy Moore, who is the director of our wonderful airport, Douglas Airport. And I promised you a stupid question. Okay, so here's the stupid question. What's up with the balloons?
Oh, gosh.
You're in aviation. What's going on with the balloons?
So your guess is as good as mine. I mean, you read all the different conspiracy theories, from hobbyists to Chinese to, pranksters, whatever it is. I don't have a good grasp on that from an aviation perspective, other than I'm hoping that the Department of Defense knows what they're doing.
Well, somebody was saying the other day that the Chinese one that was spying, we know it was spying and whatever. I get that, but spending $250,000 on this missile to take care of the darn thing when it just happens to be a weather balloon from the University of Scranton or something like that is probably not a good use of your money.
Well, and I think the valid concern is, when you have an object like that flying that's not controllable per se, and hasn't been reported, that it could cause a problem with an aircraft, and that's the last thing you would want to have happen.
Yeah. Before we get a little more serious, tell me, what's the most fun thing about your job? You sound like you have a job that everybody would want.
Well, I think that the most fun thing that I do is just getting out in the terminal and talking to people. I think that's really how you can gauge the temperature of what's going on at the airport. I've never been a person to sit behind a desk and be there all day long. I don't enjoy that. I like to get out. I like to talk to our concessionaires, our food concessionaires. I like to talk to the car rentals. I like to talk to the airline station managers and talk to passengers and just really kind of get your arms around, or my arms around, what's going on, in the day-to-day operation of the airport, and not just sit back in a desk and just kind of assume what's going on.
Yeah, so you actually talk to some passengers. Hi, my name's Andy, and I run the place, and how do you like it, right?
Absolutely.
That's cool.
I don't want to bother them if they're doing something on their computer, but I try to engage the passenger from time to time. One of the coolest things that I do is during winter operations, when our winter aircrew teams are out on the airfield taking care of snow and ice removal, I'll jump into one of those trucks, one of those plows or brooms. Absolutely. And it's a thrill, but you also learn to appreciate the job that our airfield crews do to keep those runways and taxiways safe. And they do an amazing job for this airport. In fact, the New York State Thruway is closed more than the Frederick Douglass Greater Rochester International Airport is closed.
That's cool. What's your biggest worry?
I always worry about any kind of threat to security. We take security very seriously at the airport. It's a priority. And I think that you have to have the perspective of always making sure that the airport is a safe environment. I don't get into a lot of details about safety and security because a lot of that you don't necessarily want to share with the public or give anybody that may be looking to cause any mischief or any harm, any inside ideas. And I've just made that very open with the media when we talk about airport safety and security. But any airport operator would tell you that safety and security is a big part of what we do on a daily basis, considering that, we have over 1 million passengers every year come through that airport.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's taken quite a transformation in the last few years. I mean, the place is drop dead gorgeous. I mean, it really is. I mean,
Thank you.
Sometimes I say, I'm just disappointed you can't go to the concession stands, like coming off the highway to the thruway, because it's just great. I mean, the experience is wonderful. It's not like it was in the old days.
Yep. No, everything that we try to do out at the airport really kind of falls under 3 principles, and that is enhancing passenger amenities. And then you also got to take a look at the infrastructure, what I like to call behind the walls, your HVAC systems and so forth, and then safety and security. And so I kind of term it from curb to cabin. We want to try to make your curb to cabin experience as good as it can be at any airport, throughout the country or any airport our size. And so we focus a lot of our energies on those type of activities. And I think we've been very successful, and we continue to try to look at new opportunities, new amenities, new features for the airport that can make that travel experience better.
Well, and one of the things I think a lot of people don't realize is that you have competition, and competition isn't, buses and trains. I'm talking about competition. You have an airport to the left of you and an airport to the right of you.
Absolutely. I call it, we work in a challenging environment. You have Syracuse to the east, you've got Buffalo to the west. And so we got to keep that in mind when we're trying to talk to the future passengers and travelers as to what their options are and why they should fly through Rochester. And, you got to be honest about it. I mean, Buffalo's twice the size of Rochester, 35-40% of their passengers come from Canada. So naturally, with more passengers, they're going to have more options, more airlines, more destinations. We don't enjoy that luxury because, Buffalo is to the west, Syracuse is to the east, and of course, Lake Ontario is to the north. And last time I checked, fish don't fly. So we got to keep that in mind with a challenging geographical environment.
Well, you got to put it together as a package, I would think, because you have to drive to Buffalo, which is a drive. Then you pay the tolls, and then you're paying for the parking, which is more expensive out there to begin with. And then you got to take a shuttle to the terminal. By the time you add it all up, it really doesn't pay in a lot of times just to think that you're saving a couple of bucks. I look at it that way. My time is worth something.
Sure, absolutely. And when we talk to passengers and when we try to market Rochester, we try to get those points out there. People might see a ticket that's $30 or $40 cheaper out of Buffalo, and they're just focused on that. But they don't have to think about the hour drive, or 2-hour drive going there and coming back right. Paying for parking. What if their flight is delayed or canceled? Or what a lot of passengers experienced earlier this year was when the New York State Thruway was closed because of weather, or the Buffalo airport was closed because of weather. And so the convenience of flying in and out of Rochester can far exceed the value of trying to save $30 or $40, even $50 if you look at all the extras that are added onto that.
Now, one of the things, you have new flights going to Florida now, right?
Yeah, Rochester has been one of the leading airports across the country in attracting air service from airlines that don't operate out of here. I mean, we've had some very good successes over the last couple years with Frontier Airlines coming in and offering service not only to Orlando, but also to Tampa and to Denver, seasonal service to Denver. That will start up here in the late spring, which has been wildly successful and popular. Spirit just started up last fall with daily nonstops going down to MCO or Orlando International. And just today we're announced that Spirit will be doing 4 times a week nonstop flights to Myrtle Beach starting in May.
There you go.
Another big destination. And we continue to work with some airlines that are not operating out of Rochester right now to entice them to come. And so that's a part of my job is air service development, and I take that very seriously.
And the thing is that the more people that fly out of Rochester, the more likely it is for other airlines to provide more services. You were saying that before the show.
That's an excellent point. And when I go and talk to Chamber of Commerce groups and other civic groups, I try to tell them that passengers drive air service. And so when you look at Buffalo, and if you decide to fly out of Buffalo, you are telling the airlines that they do not need to invest in Rochester. It makes going to the airline and trying to get that nonstop to Nashville, that nonstop to Las Vegas, that nonstop to Dallas, wherever it is, it makes it that much more difficult when the airlines know that you are perfectly happy driving to Buffalo and flying out of Buffalo. Why should they invest in Rochester when you've proven to them that you're willing to drive to Buffalo? And so that's a challenge that we have every single year. We lose a lot of passengers to the Buffalo airport. And if we could just stop that as much as possible, we would have flights to Nashville and to Dallas and so forth.
Well, we're about ready to head into a news break, and I have another, maybe silly question for you
when
we get back. Well, welcome back. We're listening to Andy Moore, who is the director of the Douglas International Airport. And I promised you another silly question before the break, right?
Absolutely, you did.
Well, here.
I'd expect nothing less.
From me. You get so much ridiculousnous on this show, I think, every once in a while. Okay, why do they call it a near miss? It's a near hit.
Right.
Right. I mean, it's a near miss. I don't care about near misses. I care about something that is going to hit something. Why is it not? It was a near hit. Where did that come from? You have no idea, I'm sure.
So I think they try to put a positive on that, and it's better to say a near miss than a near hit. So I think it's just as, the glass is half full, the glass is half empty.
So here's the thing. Let me throw 2 words at you. Air services.
Yep.
Okay, and then you you get going on air services.
So air service is a huge part of what I do on a daily basis with the airport team. I meet regularly with County Executive Adam Bello to talk about airport issues, and he is extremely passionate about getting more air service out of Rochester. And so that is what my task is moving forward. And we've had some great successes. We've had Spirit come in recently, Spirit Airlines. We've had Frontier Airlines come in. We've had some expansion, like American Airlines flying down to Miami and so forth. And so we need to continue to press the airlines and showcase Rochester. And so that's what I do when I go and meet with the airlines at their corporate headquarters or go to these air service conferences. I present to them why they can be successful out of Rochester and what's going on in Rochester. That's not only the economic activity in Rochester, the low unemployment, all those types of things, but also how they can make money operating out of this community. And so it's a big part of what we try to do, keeping their costs as low as possible. That kind of gets back into that aeronautical, non-aeronautical revenue conversation, but also go and show them realistic opportunities that could work within their model. Every airline has their own system and their own methodology. And so you can't go about it with a universal approach. You've got to cater what might interest Southwest may not be the same thing that interests a Spirit or a Frontier Airlines with certain destinations. But you also need to go out into the community and talk to the community about realistic expectations. Again, I said it earlier, that demand drives air service. And if we don't have a demand to a certain market, the airlines aren't going to provide a flight just because they want to, or they want to give it a chance, or they, that they feel that they owe it to a community. They're profit-making entities. They're not charities and not-for-profits. And so you have to look at those, what we call PDUs, passengers daily each way. And what are those numbers? And can those numbers support a flight to a certain destination? If I give you a quick example, a business owner that I met with about a year ago was really on me about a nonstop to Seattle. Well, there's only one airline that would provide any kind of service to Seattle out of Rochester, and that's Delta Airlines. Seattle's a hub for Delta. So that eliminates 7 of our airlines right there. But we only average 22 people a day to Seattle.
Right.
For that stage length, meaning flying time and distance, you would need at least an Airbus A320 or a Boeing 737 at 140 or 150 passengers. So if 22 people a day are flying to Seattle, how is that airline going to make any money if they're only filling up 22 seats in their plane, and their plane holds 140 or 150? And so that's what I mean by realistic expectations moving forward.
Yeah, I think a lot of people just don't understand that, because it is, they think it's almost like a public service having air flights places.
Yep. No, I think you're right. And once I explain that to people, they get it and they understand that. But, the days of a lot of different flights going out with passenger loads in the 40s and 50% like we used to see in the 70s and 80s, that doesn't exist anymore. Planes are full right now, and they've become much more judicious on where they want to fly to and why they're flying to that destination.
Well, now, and it's just my perception. So now you have all these flights at 5 o'clock in the morning because you're making a connection someplace. Is that something new that I didn't realize years ago, or is that something?
So we've started to see flights get early and earlier over the last 5 years. I mean, right now we're averaging about 4 to 5 flights a day departing Rochester before 6 a.m. and then about 13 total flights departing before about 7:30. And so the airlines have what they call banks of flights. There's banks of departures and banks of arrivals. Those early morning departures from Rochester or similar sized airports, which classified as feeder airports.
Okay.
They go to the hubs and connect into the hubs before the hubs shoot out their sequence of banks. And so that's how they schedule everything. And the unfortunate reality is that the feeder airports don't have much of a choice.
Right.
They're the airline's going to offer a particular flight to a particular hub that that suits well within their banks of flights at that hub to wherever they go throughout the world at that point in time. And so, yeah, the unfortunate reality is that we are seeing flights get earlier and earlier. The business traveler doesn't mind it because they can get to where they need to go
early. Yeah.
The vacation traveler doesn't seem to mind it all the time when you're leaving for your vacation because you're anxious to get there. You want to get there early. It's not all that great when you're coming home from your vacation, but the reality is that it's all based on banks and where the airlines want people to go and fit into what particular bank. And your feeder airports, meaning your smaller airports like Rochester, Syracuse, Albany, for example, even Buffalo, we just fit into their model, and it just happens to be earlier in the morning is when a lot of those flights go out.
Well, I guess my question is that a new phenomenon that you have these earlier flights so you can get to other places like they didn't do that years ago, or is it like my perception that there
were always early morning flights departing Rochester. It's just in the last 5 years they've gotten a little bit earlier.
And it gives you a lot of different options to get places though. I mean I don't mind it at all. And like you said, you get someplace earlier, but also you have more destinations that are available to you.
Yeah, you can I forget which airline it is, but you can jump on their like 5:45 a.m. departure out of Rochester. It connects and then go to like Las Vegas, and you can be in Las Vegas at about 9:40 in the morning.
Or what I look at is that Charlotte Douglas Airport, the other Douglas Airport,
there you go.
Has a Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you get there, in time for lunch.
In time for lunch, right? Or a breakfast sandwich. The airport went through a tremendous improvement just a couple of years ago. I mean, so let's talk about that because you had to win a competition for that, right?
Yeah. So back in 2016, then Governor Cuomo had a competition for airports for improvements to airports, whether infrastructure or, cosmetic, passenger amenities, sustainability. We were one of 6 airports to be selected for a $39.8 million grant. So we did a huge renovation project that was sorely needed at the airport. This time around, there was kind of a phase 2 of that program, which back in September of 2022, now Governor Hochul announced that Rochester was a winner of that competition. We were one of 9 airports across New York State, and we were awarded $18 million to continue to provide better amenities and to provide better services, and also do, what I said before, behind the walls infrastructure improvements to a building it's starting to age.
Yeah. Another break is coming up, and we're going to talk more about the airport and a very unusual group that you had at one time. We're going to talk about that. Well, welcome back. We're talking to Andy Moore, who's the director of the Frederick Douglass International Airport. Now, last time on the show, or maybe the time before, you were explaining what international meant. International doesn't mean that you fly to France. I mean, international means...
International means the capabilities of U.S. Customs and Border Protection at that airport. We've had them for quite a few years now. Even though we don't have any current international flights. Our last international flight was Air Canada that went 3 times a day to Toronto. That ended in 2018. But we do get a significant amount of general aviation activity coming in from Mexico, coming in from the Caribbean nations, islands. And so we have a very active Customs and Border Protection at the airport. It really has nothing to do, the designation has nothing to do with commercial airline activity. It's just the presence of U.S. Customs and Border Protection at the airport, which we have.
And there's some other things you do at the airport a lot of people may not be aware of, like honor flight. And let's go into some of those things.
Yeah, so Rochester was one of the first airports in the entire country to have honor flight, where they fly veterans. When it first started, we flew World War II veterans down to Washington, D.C. to go see the memorial, attend some events, the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier and so forth. Now it's expanded to really encompass all veterans, whether you served overseas or not. If you took the oath, you're eligible to be on honor flight. And so We are up to, I think, mission 73 or 74. I had the honor on going on mission 55 with my father, who is a Korean War veteran. And it is an absolutely unbelievable experience. And we're very fortunate to have these missions, 6 of them a year, 3 in the spring and 3 in the fall time.
I didn't realize there were 6 of them.
Yep.
That's where. And what other programs do you have that people may not know about?
Yeah, so we have another program where we partner with the Arc of Monroe called Rock Your Flight. And this is also an opportunity where family members or guardians that have children or siblings that may have some emotional issues or something along those lines, and they want to get an experience of flying before they actually fly for real. And so we will partner with TSA. We'll partner with an airline and provide an opportunity for these parents or guardians or siblings to bring the individual into the airport. They'll go through the ticketing process. They'll go through the TSA checkpoint. They'll go down to the gate. They'll actually board the plane and sit in the plane so that the family members can see how the person reacted to this entire experience before they actually go and do it. And so it is another incredible opportunity that we offer here at the airport for family members that may have some emotionally challenged children or siblings. We also have a Fearless Flyer program, which is pretty cool. That can kind of be a little sporadic on when we offer that. And that's for individuals that just have a fear for flying. And we have a psychologist that we can work with that will have some educational sessions and get people to kind of overcome those fears. And again, get them to actually board a plane and fly. And some of the times it's the first time anybody's ever flown. And so we have a lot of different offerings like that and capabilities and passenger amenities, whether it's hearing loops at the airport for deaf and hard of hearing individuals. As you know, Rochester has a big population of deaf and hard of hearing. And actually, it's called IRA program for visually impaired individuals to help navigate through the airport. So plenty of passenger amenities and programs that go on behind the scenes.
Yeah, I'm smiling because we're talking about fear of flying or whatever, and I'm smiling because my daughter changed my mind with that. She, turbulence bothered me. She goes, "Dad, it's like a roller coaster.
Right?
Just enjoy the turbulence." She goes, "The wings aren't going to fall off, Dad.
Yeah,
you're doing fine." So we were talking before the show about some, and I have to talk about this before the show is over. You had an unusual group at one point in time at certain. Just go into it.
So a few years ago, I believe it was back in 2015 or 2014, I just can't remember. Apparently, unbeknownst to us, and probably not promoted in the Rochester community, or Visit Rochester probably didn't promote it.
Probably wasn't part of our travel guide.
But there was a nudist convention somewhere in this area. And to get right to the point, some of those individuals came back from their convention and decided that they were going to continue that, and walked into the airport nude, walked to the TSA checkpoint nude, and the TSA officers at the checkpoint really had no idea what they were going to do with this. And it created a little bit of a buzz and a little bit of a stir as other passengers were there too. Eventually a couple of the individuals went into the restroom and put on some clothes and continued on their way. But let's just say that was the talk of the airport for a couple days when that occurred.
So you went to the restroom to put on your clothes.
Correct.
And so if you're naked outside, why? I don't understand the logic in that. Why don't we just, I need my privacy.
They may have just been enjoying themselves so much.
Now, were they all on the same flight? Were they hopefully they're going someplace warm, I would hope.
I don't know. I didn't necessarily inquire, in depthly on this.
Okay, but this is not one of those times you went up to somebody said, "Hi, I'm Andy. I run the place. How you doing?"
I did not.
Have you wiped your hands? Yeah. The whole idea of this of this whole thing is just absurd to me. This could make a best of moment.
Absolutely, and that's one of the exciting things about working as an airport is you come in there and you're like, I need to get these 3 things done today, and at the end of the day, you didn't accomplish any one of those 3, but you had to accomplish other tasks that pop up. You certainly have to multitask.
So how long have you been director of the airport? You say 8 years?
I've been director of the airport since 2018.
Okay.
So before that, I was deputy director and then assistant director.
Okay, and you're going to be here for, it's not like you're going to a bigger airport. This isn't like AAA ball and you're going to big league. You want to be here.
No, yeah. This is my home. I've got young kids in school here locally. I'm not looking to move on anywhere.
And now do you fly with them? Do you go, I'm sure you don't get free tickets.
No, there are no perks. Trust me.
No perks.
I get asked that question quite a bit. There are no perks. You don't ask for it. It's an ethical run operation.
Now, do the employees of the airlines still, get these free trips, places, and stuff like that? Or do you not know? Or
yeah, they most of the airlines still have what they call non-rev or non-revenue capabilities for employees, and usually those individuals have to go standby. And so, if there's empty seats on a plane, and they would know ahead of time if a plane's going to be full or not, so they can schedule it accordingly. They would fly for free.
Okay, so we have a minute left. So you got 1 minute to give a promotional ad for the airport. Go ahead.
So I think at the airport, we have incredible passenger amenities. It's a comfortable place to go. It's very simple to get to. You can get to this airport within 20 minutes versus driving to Buffalo and not knowing what's going to happen. We've partnered with Greenlight, so we've got incredible Wi-Fi for the business traveler and the leisure traveler, great concessions. And I think it really comes down to getting more people to go out and travel and more people to use Rochester. I mentioned before, if you choose to fly out of another airport, certainly that's your choice, but you are telling the airline that they don't need to invest in the Frederick Douglass Greater Rochester International Airport, and it makes it more difficult to go out and get more flights, more destinations, and more airlines.
And I am certainly a fan of the airport. It's a jewel. It's not like being in the New York metropolitan area. You have to go an hour and a half to get to the airport, and then you're on a shuttle for 20 minutes and all this other stuff. It is absolutely a little jewel, and we should be thankful that we have it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's wonderful with all the community support that we have for the airport. And, and again, County Executive Bello has been very supportive of the airport and air service initiatives and amenities for passengers. And it's great to have that leadership from the top.
Well, it's great to have you on again. And we're going to have you, another 6 or 8 months.
Happy to come back.
Update to all this stuff.
Happy to come back.
Well, thank you again.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for watching this YouTube. If you liked it, please like and share.